time to kick ass and chew bubble gum, and I'm all out of gum.
Hello, welcome back to A Boring Revolution, your number one news source for everything in regards to the Boring Company. Thank you for joining me on this wonderful evening. Okay, so I'm going back into my favourite topic, which is utility tunnels and how that all interlinks with district heating systems, because I believe the distribution and storage of heat is a really useful piece of technology, but also, most importantly, it is a really good way to make money and obviously cut down CO2 emissions. Because no one wants a big boiler or a big storage cylinder in the house. Ideally, we could use that space for other things. Anyway, so let's get on to our topic here. So, district heating sand storage ponds. So, how you actually store heat for district heating is a very interesting topic, and I believe there's a really great company who have a great product that they're developing called a sand storage pond or sand storage system. And I think that would integrate quite well with the Boring Company tunnels in terms of their utility tunnels. So let me elaborate on that a bit further. So here is our mock kind of utility tunnel, as it were. Lots and lots of different use cases. Some would make a small amount of money for the Boring Company. Some would make an absolutely humongous amount of money for the Boring Company. Let's kind of categorize them. So you have high voltage cables. Every city, every town, every village needs high voltage electricity supplies. So ultimately that's going to be, a good money earner for the Boring Company if they can put it in their system. Let's have a look. So we have our DC power. District cooling, obviously certain parts of the USA and Southern Europe will benefit greatly from district cooling. So think places like Florida, Arizona, Texas, California. Obviously, if you can kind of centralize the cooling of a town or a city, people are going to be willing to pay money for that if they can do away with the air conditioners, or at least have them turned off for most of the year. Fibre optic cable is very important for development of any smart city. So I think that again, fibre optic cables, installing them in utility tunnels is going to be definitely something that the Boring Company eventually gets into. And high-speed internet access is very important. Okay, I think that the easy way to make big money is district heating. Everyone needs to heat the home. Everyone needs a hot shower. Everyone needs to have access to boiling water. And I think district heating is a really great way of providing that at a low cost, affordable, sustainable manner. This is what a utility tunnel potentially could look like. This pipe here, it's a little bit big, but potentially it could be used for the transportation of hot water, as it were, or very hot water. So this is our typical kind of district heating setup. As you can see, there are many sources. I don't like this source. I don't like incinerators. Data centers are few and far between. Industrial processes, there's lots of people, making steel, making bread, making, manufacturing products. But again, they're few and far between in many places. So there's definitely places where you can get heat. But is there a way of taking sustainable energy, storing that and then utilizing that at a cost-effective, manner? Because boiling water using electricity has been frowned upon, for a long time, because, electricity rates tend to be quite high, and, people really can't afford that. Most people can, but there's lots and lots of people that are going to really struggle. And, given the fact that electricity rates, seem to be going up a lot recently, it doesn't make for a good, idea. So, or make for a good system. So, let's have a look at potentially where sources are at the moment for heating in, your kind of district heating systems in Eastern and Northern Europe and some parts of the USA as well. So you're going to get a lot of heat from a coal power station. Obviously, you're heating that water up in a boiler and then you're running it through a turbine, and then that, obviously turns a generator. And then at the end of that process, you end up with lots and lots of hot water, which is, slightly below boiling temperature, so less than 100 degrees Celsius. You then have to cool that water off in your cooling towers like this below. That is in itself quite wasteful. You're essentially, letting that profit float away into the air, which is a great shame, really. It'd be great if you could use that heat in district heating. Most coal power stations don't, bother with that. And they produce excessive amounts of heat as well. You really struggle to use all that heat just because there's so much. And obviously, coal is going away. Most coal power stations will be closed in the next 7 years. And it's just not really a great reliable source in the long term. Biomass power stations, a lot of people are into burning trees and burning wood pellets. I think it's a bit of a silly idea. I think having thousands of acres of forest land and then removing these trees and then burning them is, on a small scale, it kind of does make a little bit of sense, but on a large scale, all over a big country, I don't really see it as a sustainable way of producing heat. Waste incinerators is possibly the dumbest way you can generate heat. Not only are you creating insane amounts of toxic air, but also you're burning potentially useful and recyclable materials. Again, not a big fan of that. This is potentially always going to be a good source of heat. Again, nuclear reactors, especially legacy ones, are going to produce monster amounts of heat, like our cooling towers down here, if not more than that. Using all that heat is going to be difficult. However, small modular reactors like this one here, which are close to 85 to 90% smaller than legacy reactors, are going to produce nice modest amounts of heat, which is going to be perfect for like a medium-sized town or a small city, and it's got the bonus of producing very clean electricity on top of that as well. So again, that's potentially somewhere in the future that we could look at kind of exploiting that hot water that's produced from these reactors. Gas power stations, cogeneration. A lot of heat in New York is produced via cogeneration, which is like a gas turbine. So it's producing electricity and hot or steam, as it essentially is. Obviously, steam is hot, but this is all useful stuff. I think gas power is going to be around for the next 20 years or so. However, again, it obviously produces a lot of CO2, so at some point in the future, it is going to go away, as it were. The question is there a better way of doing it? And I think there is. Industrial processes, again, a lot of these industrial processes, including steel making, produce absolute monster amounts of heat, and this can be used in district heating. Number 7, most district heating systems don't use any of these sources, and I think they should be using these sources. I think these are the cleanest sources. I think these are wind turbines are being built at a very, very rapid pace here in the UK and most of Europe. Solar panels are being installed everywhere. Geothermal is a really promising technology that is continuing to grow, and tidal power has really come back on the scene as potentially a very useful way to generate electricity. And if you can generate electricity through these sources and then convert that into heat, which is going to be 97% efficient, that's going to be extremely useful. So how do we get all these sources from here and put them into a district heating system? And the easy way to do that is to store heat. How do you store heat? You could store it in water. You could store it potentially in a special kind of thermal battery, or you could store it in sand. Sand itself is a very, very good medium for storing heat. You're going to be able to store at least 2 to 3 times more heat in a cubic meter of sand than a cubic meter of water. So straight away, this is clearly the way forward. Now, there's this very innovative company called Polar Night Energy. They were on the Now You Know channel. There are other companies doing this, but in particular, I like the approach that Polar Night Energy are taking. I think that storing heat in sand is the way forward. I don't think that in terms of efficiency and the actual volume of heat that you can store in the sand, it can be beaten. Really, I just don't see that, and it can come from a variety of sources. So let's have a think about how we actually, do this, and what are the capabilities of this. Before we do that, let's think about the capability of the system. So it talks about 1,000 degrees Celsius here. It's not going to be that high. It's probably going to be half that, if not slightly less than half that. You can extract a massive amount of energy from this, up to 20 gigawatt hours of potential storage, which is insane amounts, and that's just via sand like this, just general sand that you can extract from pretty much all over the world. It doesn't need to be the best sand in the world. It can be fairly crap sand, really. You'd expect to get maybe 40 years out of a plant like this, maybe slightly less. Hours and months of storage. Ideally you'd want to be storing it for maybe a few days before using it all in a period of a couple of days. 99% efficiency. Obviously, converting electricity into heat is super efficient. I think it's closer to 97% from what I've been reading up on, but if they say 99, maybe they have a very efficient kind of transfer of heat within their systems, because there are going to be losses as you're moving heat through the system. Low investment costs, very safe, and low running costs. So, it just ticks all the boxes. Why have we not been doing this previously? And the reason is we've never needed to, because all we need to do is just burn gas, which is basically super cheap. So this is an up and coming technology. It's being researched a lot, and it's going to develop a lot over the next 10 years. Let's just read this paragraph here. We use really hot sand as a storage medium. We convert electricity to heat and store it for later use. We use sand as the storage medium, which leads to safe operation and a natural balance in the storage cycle. So obviously the wind is not blowing all the time. The sun is not shining. Maybe the tide is out. Maybe the nuclear power station is down for maintenance. There's going to be lulls, and there's also going to be times when there's an excess amount of electricity. So it kind of helps it, in a big way, fill in that gap. Additional sand is a cheap and abundant material, which can be heated up to 1,000 degrees Celsius. Again, you don't need to heat it up that high, but they're just trying to tell you that potentially they could get up to 1,000 degrees C. It's probably going to be around 550, 600 degrees C, maybe even as low as 450 degrees. Inside the sand, we build our heat transfer system, which is basically a network of pipes that move the hot air, because what they're doing is they're using electricity to make hot air. They're then blowing that hot air into the sand storage pond. It goes into the sand. It stays in there for many days, if not weeks. And then when they want to extract it, they basically blow room temperature air in there. The sand dissipates the heat into the air, and then you can send that air to either someone's home, or maybe combine that with a water system to heat up the water, and then send that water to someone to use for whatever purpose they so wish. So it needs to be well insulated. That's it. That's a key performance criteria of this particular system. So if we were going to build this in the real world, if I was going to build this in the real world, how exactly would I do it? Well, you'd have an absolutely ginormous excavation. You'd want to use the land, above your excavation for something else. Potentially a park, potentially a greenhouse, potentially some retail units, whatever it is. You want to use that land efficiently, but underneath there you have all your systems. So you'd have your kind of production facility for producing heat at the surface, and then it would pipe it in here. So it's just essentially a very large hole in the ground, a very large excavation. However you want to, it's going to be very deep as well, so 17 meters deep by 25 meters wide. Also, with it being very deep, it would also protrude from the ground as well. So it would be 3 meters above ground level. The reason that you do that is because you'd want to limit the depth of either your sheet piles like we've got here, or your CFA, continuous flight auger piles. So you've got a very, very large hole. In that hole, you fill it with sand. I don't know if you'd compact it. Maybe it's better if it's not compacted because, you know, and then you'd have your pipe network that runs through here. Like this, it goes everywhere. And then when that heat moves through the pipes, it obviously dissipates itself through the sand. This would be a very, very large excavation, by the way. Obviously, with the width of this excavation being 25 meters, you're going to have props at fairly regular intervals, maybe 5 to 6 meters, maybe less than that. These props would be, might need to make them permanent because you're going to have insulation that runs along the edges here and along the top as well. That insulation is going to be very thick. I think at the minimum it would be 480, it might even be 600 millimeters. Obviously you don't want that insulation to become compressed, so you're going to have some form of permanent support inside the excavation that prevents it obviously from collapsing, because the weight of your ground here is going to push in and you don't want that. But it helps the fact that you've got it protruding above the existing ground level. Whoops, a daisy. Anyway, that's how you would build it. It would look a bit like this. As you can see, we've got our props here. It'd be a lot deeper than this and a lot wider. This is a tiny one in comparison. It'd be very long. So 66 meters long is a monster, and that would be enough sand that'd be stored in this excavation to potentially give people weeks and give 30,000. In this particular one, there'd be enough sand to give heat to 30,000 people if potentially there was no supply for a week. So you could have a week's worth of hot water and heating for 30,000 people. But it's very, very big, as you can see, and potentially you could make this a lot bigger. Another way of doing it is, if you didn't want it to be this long, so that's your ground level, by the way, this grey bar here, you could essentially make it wider, so you can maybe make it 40 meters and then have this be 45 meters long, but you'd need to then put a column in the middle so that you could then put structures up here above it, because you don't want that land above there to go to waste. Okay, so how does this all work in practice? So here's my beautiful diagram, which I hope you agree is absolutely phenomenal. Here is our sand pond, very hot, 500 degrees Celsius. Most of the electricity used to generate heat is coming from the wind and solar. So at night time, when everyone's asleep and there's lots of wind, it's using that wind power to generate electricity, and then that electricity is used to heat the sand. During the day, when the sun is up there and you're getting lots and lots of solar, you're using that electricity during the day when everyone's at work to again heat that sand up. Also, you can get electricity from other sources: gas, coal, tidal power, various other things, biomass, who knows. But you want the majority to come from wind and solar, especially in the UK. You want wind. Once that's full of heat on a day when you've got essentially no wind and very little solar, you're then using that hot sand to heat the air. That hot air is then used to heat water up to very, very high temperatures, possibly above 125 degrees Celsius. You'd have to pressurize the water as well. You then get hot water from other sources as well, potentially industry, potentially biomass, potentially existing legacy power stations. Also, a major source would be small modular reactors, which produce a lot of hot water. This hot water is then piped into your large town or small city, and then all the buildings are heated using this very hot water. Also, industry in the city as well can use the hot water. When the water, this is a closed system, by the way, so when the water has been essentially pumped through these various buildings, when it comes out, it's obviously going to be cooler, potentially as low as 70 degrees Celsius. It's then recycled, because it's very, very easy to take 70 70 degrees Celsius water and heat it up to 125 degrees than to take 20 degrees Celsius water and heat it up to 125 degrees. So that'd be a 105 degrees increase. The closed system, this water is never consumed, by the way. It contains various additives that help prevent rusting. Our tunnels are here, so the boring company tunnels are here, and we are running our various utilities through there, including our district heating. It's not just going to be district heating. There's going to be obviously our high voltage power cables and potentially local water supplies and various other things in there as well. But the majority of money that we make from utility tunnels is going to come from district heating and potentially district cooling as well. So at this point we have hot water which we're going to recycle back. Yeah, so we're going to bring it back here, and then we're going to use our hot sand to heat this 70 degrees Celsius water back up to 125 degrees, and then it comes back through, and then it goes back into our city. It's then reused, then it comes back. So it's a constant process. Also as well, because I've been reading up a lot about geothermal recently, I believe that at the Eden project in the south west of England, they're doing a lot of work with geothermal at the moment, and I believe that this has a lot of potential. However, you're not going to be able to get water up to 125 degrees Celsius. So what you want to do is take it up to 85 degrees Celsius and then put it back into your system, and then you end up with water that's like 77.5 degrees. And again, it makes it easier because your sand is at 500 degrees Celsius. This water is at at this point here. At this point here, it's obviously at like 77.5. So then when you're mixing it here with your sand, you're not actually putting it into the sand. You're using hot air over the sand to then heat the water. So you're not actually pouring the water into the sand. By the way, don't get confused with that. There is a mechanism for taking heat out of the sand and then using that to boil the water. It's a totally separate system, but yeah. Okay, so that's how it looks on our diagram. There's probably a better way of displaying it actually, but yeah, time limitations. Okay, so that's kind of our system. I hope that explains things. This is what our excavation is going to look like. If we look at our kind of 65 meters long by 17 meters deep by 26 meters wide, how much is that going to cost? Well, in terms of actually producing this, having the systems to heat the sand up with hot air and that sort of thing, you're looking in the region of $7 to $10 million potentially. I think over time that could potentially come down as well, but 7 to 10 million, and then you're getting 40 years out of it. So all in all, it's a very nice little system there. It can be built fairly quickly as well. You could probably build something like this in 6 to 9 months potentially, if everything you're just pulling off a shelf and it's already prefabricated. There's nothing really that difficult to it, and here's our sand. You just the complicated bit is actually heating the air and actually dissipating that heat throughout the sand. That's the hard bit. Actually producing the excavation and filling it full of sand is not actually that difficult. So what are my recommendations? What am I saying that we could do here to further progress the boring company and enable it to make good money, as it were? So the boring company should partner up with Paul Knight Energy. They have a great system here. They've got a great team of very young kind of entrepreneurs and scientists. I think the boring company should go in there, maybe even buy up a stake in the company. Say, hey, we'd like to buy a 40% stake in the company, or we'd like to offer you a partnership deal so you can work with us on our utility tunnels and our district heating systems. They should help finance the construction of a bigger test system. So they currently have a very small system, which is I believe about 40 cubic meters of sand. That's quite tiny. It might be slightly bigger than that actually, maybe 60. But you want something that's thousands, 20, 25, 30,000 cubic meters of sand. So you want to construct a bigger test system, potentially somewhere in the region of 10,000 cubic meters of sand, so you can then test how long does it take to reach maximum potential heat in this system. How long can you store it for? How long does it take you to remove the heat from the sand and then transfer that into water to boil the water? There's lots and lots of unknowns here because it's never really been done on this scale. So they want to build a bigger test system and then they can further improve the algorithms to make it more efficient. They should attempt to acquire relevant patents and technology. There's a lot of patents out there and a lot of technology solutions that enable the transfer of hot air into hot water, or to transfer hot air through a medium like sand. So acquiring those patents will be very useful, because in some occasions patents really are a roadblock for developing a piece of technology, and then you've got to wait 30, 40, 50 years for that patent to expire. So if you can acquire it at a reasonable price, that's a good idea. Explore integrating this into future gigafactories. I think gigafactories are obviously going to need heating. They're going to need heat for various processes. This kind of system would be absolutely perfect. I can't stress this enough. This is probably the most important thing they should do. They should build the sand pond adjacent to the gigafactory, and then they can just transfer heat in directly. They won't even need to use hot water as a medium. They could essentially use hot air, potentially, if they had a large enough ductwork, and then just pipe that straight into the gigafactory there, and it'd be absolutely immensely efficient and save thousands of dollars every single month. So it would probably pay for itself in under 5 years. Acquire old power stations for district heating uses. So obviously the advantage of acquiring an old coal-fired power station, or an old gas-fired power station, or even an old nuclear power station, is that you've already got a massive electricity connection to the local grid. You've got lots and lots of land, and all the infrastructure's in there. You potentially got road networks and maybe even a rail network there as well. So there's lots and lots of useful things that you could do there with old power stations, and just acquiring them. But they want to give them away potentially. So if you could acquire them for 1 to 2 million, then that's going to be really useful. And you could scrap the building, and you could probably get that money back. So people are very, very keen to sell these old power stations, and it'll be worth your while to build these sand storage ponds on the land where these old power stations used to exist. And you can bring in your renewable energy via that grid connection very, very easily. Okay, so that's kind of my presentation, as it were. I hope you like my recommendations. If you've got any questions, drop them in the comments below. Please tell me if you think this is a good idea, or if it's a terrible idea, or where you think that there potentially could be issues integrating these sand storage ponds. If you've not already done so, follow me on Twitter, Discord and Patreon. To all my Patreons, thank you so much. Really do appreciate your support. Please continue to support me. I really, really do appreciate this, and it's obviously helping to make better videos like the one you see today. Thank you so much. Okay, so thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Please subscribe to this video. We're almost at 8,000 subscribers. Yeah, that's pretty incredible. And yeah, so that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please tell me what you think about it. Please offer suggestions and any kind of additional use cases for these sand storage ponds. Thank you very much. Hope you have a lovely day, and remember, don't be boring. I will see you on the next one. Thank you and good night.
Wow! This is